Thomas Turner Ramey, the owner of the famous monks or Cahokia Mound, was a great student of Native American character and always claimed that the Americans had nothing to do with the Great Mound or its prototypes in Ohio. He claimed that these mounds were erected by a people of a much higher order of intelligence, and that they were intended for several purposes and not alone as burying grounds, as was universally believed. He held that the parties who constructed the big earthwork had a distinct knowledge of geometry, as all the figures on the inside are constructed on geometrical lines. The mound, although made of earth, bears some resemblance to the Egyptian pyramids. About 10 years ago, a delegation from the Smithsonian Institute visited the mound and spent several days exploring it and taking notes of Mr. Ramey's work. Many of the party agreed with him that the mound was not the work of the Native Americans who have occupied America since Columbus's time, while others held that it was purely one of the bigger class of graveyards erected by the mound-building Americans. How this class of people could construct perfect hexagons and other figures so mathematically correct was not understood by any of the party. That was an article in the Alton Evening Telegraph, June 28, 1899. We tend to romance ideas of our ancient past and not give credit where credit is due. We know Cahokia Mounds is the largest pre-Columbian archaeological site north of Mexico. It's also the earliest of the large Mississippian settlements. And then this ancient civilization basically vanished. What happened to them? Recent studies reveal some intriguing data about the people of Cahokia Mounds. Perhaps a little digging, we can find out the truth. Many, possibly most, Midwestern, Southern, and Plains Indians were in one way or another entangled in a history that began at Cahokia. The evidence is often indirect, but it is compelling, and points towards a singular history-changing moment 1,000 years ago, when social life, political organization, religion, art, and culture were all utterly transformed in the middle of the Mississippi River Valley. At the epicenter of events was a radical new kind of social and political experiment, a planned capital city. Someone, or some governing body, designed one from scratch at Cahokia. The leaders superimposed a new plan directly over an old village and supervised the construction of great earthen pyramids, open plazas, and huge wooden buildings. Then they gained control over people living throughout the region, an unprecedented move in the history of ancient America north of Mexico. A new culture developed at the city, perhaps inspired by Mesoamerican models. The people of Cahokia practiced human sacrifice, incorporated obelisk-like timber posts into their worship, told stories of superhuman men and women, used Mesoamerican-style flint daggers, and understood the cosmos in ways similar to Mesoamerican notions. They then spread this new way of life, which included intensified maize agriculture, across the Midwest and into the South and Plains with a religious fervor. Archaeologists refer to the culture as Mississippian, after the river that flows by many of its known sites. What archaeologists don't agree on is how could a civilization as advanced as the Mississippians simply disappear? In the 1990s, interpretations of archaeological research led to the proposal that Cahokians at the height of their city's population had cut down many trees in the area. This practice, they said, led to widespread deforestation, erosion, and increasingly severe and unpredictable local flooding. In 2021, Dr. Rankin, an archaeologist at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and her colleagues set out to discover more about how Cahokia's environment changed over the course of its development. Her team's research suggests that stories of great civilizations, seemingly laid low by ecological hubris, may say more about our current anxiety. So what about the idea of deforestation? What happens when this occurs? What happens to the trees? Together with their extensive root systems, trees act as a vast sponge soaking in the excess water. However, when a large number of trees are cut down, the root system is destroyed, and there is nothing to soak in the extra water, which flows freely, flooding the entire area. In simple words, deforestation leads to decreased water holding capability of soil. This causes excess water flow into the ground, resulting in floods. Earth has lost about 2/3 of its tree cover, and deforestation is the primary cause. Several reasons constitute excessive shaving of Earth's green cover.
Sit right down, you're next.
What are you up to, Grapehead?
I was shaving the ice.
In the 1860s, Bluffs upstream from Cahokia were cleared for coal mining, causing enough localized flooding to bury some of the settlement sites. European deforestation created a deep overlying layer of eroded sediment, distinct from the soils of the pre-contact floodplain. For most academics, there is an assumption that indigenous peoples did everything wrong. But there's just no indication that Cahokian farmers caused any sort of environmental trauma. Ecocide narratives often become accepted in a discourse, despite a lack of direct evidence that the hypothesized environmental consequences of land use practices occurred, and need to be validated with the stratigraphic record. Now I know what you're thinking. What in the heck is the stratigraphic record? Stratigraphy is a branch of geology concerned with the study of rock layers, or strata, which, contrary to popular consumption, it is not a delicious dish of layered bread, cheese, and meat. The first practical large-scale application of stratigraphy was by William Smith in the 1790s and early 19th century. Known as the father of English geology, Smith recognized the significance of strata or rock layering and the importance of fossil markers for correlating strata. So what does stratas have to do with Cahokia? Feces. Yes, feces. In 2020, archaeologist A.J. White presented his study using fecal stanals to contradict the myth of the vanishing Indian that favors decline and disappearance over Native American resilience and persistence. Fecal stanals are microscopic organic molecules produced in our gut when we digest food, especially meat. They are excreted in our feces and can be preserved in layers of sediment for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Because humans produce fecal stanals in far greater quantities than animals, their levels can be used to gauge major changes in regions' population. It found that back-to-back floods and then drought played a key role in the 12th century exodus of Cahokia's Mississippian inhabitants. Do you mind stop playing with the board? Yes, that's a good kitty. The view of Cahokia as a place riven by self-inflicted natural disasters speaks more to Western ideas about humanity's relationship with nature, one that typically casts humans as a separate blight on the landscape and a source of endless, rapacious exploitation of resources. But while that narrative resonates in a time of massive deforestation, pollution, and climate change, it's a mistake to assume that such practices are universal. We know they left the city quite abruptly, and later Native American tribes occupied Cahokia. But we know very little about the past civilization before them. Perhaps the theory that this mound-building civilization brought their tools and trades across thousands of miles to northern getaway town. Back when spiritual leaders were actually architects and engineers, and the masses believed in corn, the sun, and human sacrifice. This has more serious implications than previously thought. The area now is less than impressive. A highway bisects the entire grounds, and poorly invested interests make the town of Collinsville about 10,000 people less than the grandeur of Cahokia might have been at its peak. During the 1890s, Thomas Ramey, who understood the value of this ancient civilization, lobbied the state for Cahokia's preservation. His efforts were thwarted by a Chicago legislator who remarked that his district needed money for live people, and the guys in the mound are all dead. In spite of various efforts in designating Cahokia a UNESCO site, it is in desperate need of attention. Attention that requires all of us who enjoy learning about the past, worthy of giving to a site known in history as a cosmopolitan whir of language, art, and spiritual ferment. We can do better about our own history. If you found this video interesting about Cahokia Mounds, please stay tuned. We got a lot more coming from Mindful Entertaining History. From all of us here, Minerva and myself, we appreciate you tuning in. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and look forward to our next video. Thank you.